every champion falls, no matter how dominant, how untouchable. Time, pressure, and fate always finds a way in that cage. One mistake can cost you everything: the glory, the legacy, the belt. But for a select few, that fall only ignites something deeper: the rise again. And somehow they rise faster, harder, hungrier. No tune-ups and no mercy, just vengeance and redemption. These are the warrior, the 10 champions who lost their crowns, and then they took them back. Looking at a guy across the ring, I can see it in their eyes sometimes. He was scared. He didn't want to be there. That's what Randy Couture said after beating Vitor Belfort in 1997.
Style, that right hand to the jab hand. Left is this box with Belfort.
Nobody wants Belfort to throw something arcing.
Great left by Belfort, though.
There's a double. There's a double leg.
A little bit staggered.
And Belfort looks tired here. Belfort does look a little dazed. He's going down. He wants the guard now. He wants the guard. Some knees to the head.
And there goes Randy Couture. He's still punching away. Not much defense now by Vitor. That's it. It's over.
Vitor never forgot. 7 years later, he came back, calmer, sharper, and more dangerous than ever before. His explosive power made him one of the most feared men in the sport. And at UFC 46 in 2004, he finally got his shot at redemption. From the opening bell, Belfort looked composed. But just 49 seconds in, Couture winced in pain. And then a free cut had opened over his eye, and it wasn't just ugly, it became dangerous. Couture, he was brave, he wanted to fight on, but the doctor stopped it, and it sent him straight to the hospital. He hated how it ended. 7 months later, he got his rematch, and this time, there was no accidents. Couture dominated with wrestling and some dirty boxing.
Back to the ground again, Vitor just, he's got him down.
There it is. Couture comes in and closes the gap quickly.
The right eye, and it might have been the shoulder of Randy Couture as he went in to close the distance.
I've been told that it's a headbutt that caused it. And we're going to take a look at that in between rounds. Just dominates, gets in control, takes him to the ground, imposes his will. Best weapons, which are his boxing skills.
Vantage point, Joe. I literally just looked down on my notes and I have blood on my notes. That shot right there defines warrior.
Absolutely.
It's all over!
That's it.
Randy Couture!
Breaking Belfort down until the referee stopped the fight. Redemption was now finally complete. And guys, talking about redemption, let's move on to our number 2 on the list. Daniel Cormier's first win over Stipe Miocic was quick and decisive. A knockout in the first round that shocked the division. Cormier became a 2-division champion, and many thought that Miocic's time at the top was now done. But Miocic waited patiently for his rematch. He took over a year to prepare, and he came back with a clear plan. In the ring, Miocic began to adapt. In the 4th round, he found Cormier's weakness: body shots. He landed them over and over again until DC started dropping his guard, and that's when Miocic landed a huge right hand that ended the fight. It was a technical adjustment that changed everything. Miocic walked out of the cage with his title back and solidified his legacy as one of the greatest heavyweights in UFC history. When Davison Figueiredo burst onto the scene, he looked unstoppable. He had power, he had pure precision, and he was chaos all wrapped in one. By late 2020, he had defended his flyweight title in record time, fighting twice in just 21 days. And then came Brandon Moreno, the smiling assassin from Tijuana. He is hungry, he is unshakable. And when you're in the octagon with him, you're gonna feel the pressure. Their first fight at UFC 256 was a war for the ages. 5 rounds of madness ending in a draw, one of the greatest flyweight bouts ever. And then 6 months later, Moreno did the impossible. At UFC 263, he submitted Figueiredo and made history as Mexico's first UFC champion. Most fighters would have taken time to rebuild, but Figueiredo, he did not. He demanded an immediate trilogy. He left Brazil to train with Henry Cejudo and rebuilt his strategy. At UFC 270, the God of War returned to reclaim his throne, dropping Moreno 3 times, controlling the pace, and winning by unanimous decision. It was more than revenge. It was reinvention. A champion proving that even gods can fall, but they can also rise again. In the mid-2000s, the heavyweight division was unpredictable. One punch could rewrite history. Sylvia knew that better than anyone. At UFC 51, he lost his chance at the title when Andrei Arlovski dropped him with a right hand and finished with a heel hook in just under a minute. It was quick, it was brutal, and it was so humiliating for the 6'8" powerhouse. But Sylvia, he wasn't done. He rebuilt himself, he did it one jab at a time, and he was waiting for his perfect shot at revenge. That chance, it came just over a year later at UFC 59. This time, the fight, it didn't last long either, but the ending was different. Arlovski landed early. He dropped Sylvia once again. Yet Sylvia, he refused to break. He got back up, he fired back, and caught Arlovski with a thunderous right hand that ended the fight and reclaimed his heavyweight crown. Amanda Nunes had looked unstoppable for years, holding 2 belts and running through every contender. That's why her loss to Juliana Pena at UFC 269 was such a shock. Pena pressured her, she forced exchanges, and submitted her in the second round. It was one of the biggest upsets in UFC history. But Nunes didn't dwell on it for quite some time. She made changes, she switched up her camps, and she restructured her game plan. And then she came back for the immediate rematch at UFC 277. This time, Nunes looked like the fighter that everyone remembered. She switched to southpaw, she used sharp counter-striking, she mixed in takedowns, and completely controlled the fight. Pena was tough, but Nunes was in command from start to finish. After 5 rounds, Nunes regained her bantamweight title and re-established herself as one of the best fighters of all time. It was a reminder that experience, adjustments, and mindset, they matter as much as raw power. When Cain Velasquez first won the UFC title, he looked unstoppable. He was a storm of wrestling power, of pace, of absolute cardio, and a whole lot of pressure. Then, in 2011, it all came crashing down. Junior Dos Santos landed 1 right hand, 1 perfect shot, and ended Cain's reign in just 64 seconds. It was the UFC's debut on network television, and Cain's worst night of his career. He immediately began training for the rematch. He was determined to show that the first fight, it wasn't the full story, and in the second fight, Velasquez fought completely different. Instead of standing in front of Dos Santos, he used his wrestling, his conditioning, and he pushed the pace. He took Dos Santos down repeatedly and didn't give him a second to breathe. Over 5 rounds, Velasquez completely dominated the fight, winning back his heavyweight title by unanimous decision. Georges St. Pierre's loss to Matt Serra in 2007 is still regarded as one of the biggest shocks in UFC history. GSP was expected to dominate the Ultimate Fighter champion, but Serra, he landed clean shots early on, and he finished him in the first round. Instead of losing confidence, St. Pierre, he just went back to the gym and he worked on everything. His wrestling, his composure, and his defense. And just a year later, he got his rematch, this time in front of a hometown crowd in Montreal, From the opening seconds, GSP took complete control. He mixed jabs, takedowns, and ground and pound, wearing Serra down over 2 rounds before finishing the fight with strikes to the body. It wasn't even close. St. Pierre didn't just get his belt back, he showed the entire world that the first loss was just a learning experience. From that moment on, he went on one of the most dominant runs in UFC history. For over a decade, Patricio Pitbull has ruled Bellator, a 2-division champion feared for his power and his experience. Then came AJ McKee, the undefeated prodigy. He was faster, he was younger, and he was fearless. At Bellator 263, McKee did the unthinkable. He stunned Pitbull with a head kick and locked in a guillotine choke, forced the legend to tap in less than 2 minutes. A new king was now crowned. But Patricio, he wasn't done. He stayed quiet, he studied his opponent, and he waited for the rematch. When it came at Bellator 277, then the story completely flipped. There was no chaos, there was no emotion, there was just pure control. Pitbull fought with discipline, with precision, and with experience, shutting down McKee's attacks round after round. 5 rounds later, the judges restored his crown. For Pitbull, it wasn't just about revenge, it was about legacy, proving that even when youth rises, greatness endures. Israel Adesanya and Alex Pereira had a rivalry that spanned both kickboxing and also MMA. Pereira had already beaten Adesanya twice in kickboxing and once again in the UFC to take the middleweight title. When the rematch was announced, a lot of fans thought that the same thing would happen again. Pereira had the size, he had the power, and the psychological edge. But Adesanya had spent months studying Pereira's style. And in the second fight, he stayed composed, waiting for the right moment. And in the second round, Pereira had him backed up against the cage, the exact position where he knocked him out before. But this time, Adesanya, he countered with a perfect right hand and followed by another that ended the fight instantly. It was clean, it was so decisive, and it was emotionally charged. And you could see that just by looking at Adesanya's celebration after. For Adesanya, it wasn't just about the belt, it was about finally beating the one man who'd always had his number. Alex Pereira has made a career of proving people wrong. When he lost his light heavyweight title to Magomed Ankalaev by decision, a lot of fans thought that the momentum had now finally shifted. But Ankalaev's wrestling and his pressure seemed like the perfect answer to Pereira's striking. But Pereira, he didn't take a break. He asked for an immediate rematch, and the UFC booked it for UFC 320. The results couldn't have been more different. Pereira came out aggressive, landing hard calf kicks and controlling the distance. Within the first round, he landed his trademark right hand, and that same punch that won him titles in 2 divisions. It's the same one that sent Ankalaev down. And seconds later, the fight was stopped. In just a minute and 20 seconds, Pereira had erased the loss and reclaimed his title. It was the perfect example of how things can change in MMA. The difference between a champion and a challenger can be just one clean punch. So guys, what do all of these fighters have in common? Well, it's their mindset. They didn't take years off after losing their belts. They didn't look for easy fights to rebuild confidence. They went straight back into the fire and proved that losing once doesn't mean that you're finished. Winning a belt is hard, but winning it back immediately after losing it? Well, that just takes something different. It means that you learned, you adjusted, and you refused to accept the loss as your legacy. Whether it's Alex Pereira's knockout power, Cain Velasquez's pace, Amanda Nunes' adjustments, each of these champions showed what separates good fighters from the great ones. In this sport, it's not just about winning, it's about how quickly you can come back when everything falls apart. And that's what makes these 10 stories some of the best redemption moments in MMA history. But guys, I want you to let me know in the comments down below, what do you think of this list, and did we miss out on anyone? Let me know, guys, and also don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe, and I'm Ty, guys, and I will catch you on the next one.